Hey, everyone. It's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. This is going to be the penultimate comic book countdown, comic book thoughts, and little haul of the year. I don't know why we like the word penultimate, or why everyone uses it. My daughter says it comes from the British, that they started it. So, who knows? But I only had 6 new books from the comic book store this past Wednesday. And but I had hauled quite a bit in the last week or so. So I've got a lot to show you. So as I have been doing quite regularly now, there will be timestamps so that you can skip to wherever you want. You can skip to the look inside or skip all the way to the haul at the end of the video, which might in this case be the largest part of the video anyway. This was a Christmas present from George from Meanwhile at the Podcast, one of my favorite podcasts and favorite podcaster. So thank you very much, George. Very cool. My first, what do you call this? A Tumblr, I guess? My first superhero-related Tumblr. I have a few comic book-related coffee mugs, but no Tumblr, if that's what it is. So in at number 6 was this one-shot from SourcePoint Press called The Curse of Cleaver County. And there was some interesting art, interesting color in here. SourcePoint Press seems way on the edge of the small kind of publishers that you find in the regular comic book shops now. And this, as you can probably guess from the cover and the title, Curse of Cleaver County, is a horror anthology. It had 2 stories. I guess they both take place in Cleaver County. But they both felt like sketches for horror story ideas, or just sort of the very basics. And also, they were very familiar situations, I guess, for horror stories. One was someone who was killed a long time in the town's past, who comes back when lovers do a certain thing or say his name or something like that, and then he kills them. And everybody in the town is now related, because it was 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Most people in the town are related to the killer. So, of course, he comes. And then the second story is about a serial killer that there's a myth about having been in these woods. And, of course, he shows up. And that's pretty much it for this comic, I'm afraid to say. So it was in at number 6. I really want to like these horror anthologies. And it wasn't awful. It was just, like I said, it just felt like a sketch for stuff. Kind of sketchy also at this point is Berserker. This is Berserker's penultimate issue. The art and color and everything continues to be fantastic. Oh, I'm supposed to save that for the look inside. I'm getting rusty already as the year ends. But the story at this point is a little fuzzy, and maybe it's because there's been a long time between this issue and issue 10. I think now we're finding out certain things about where Berserker's powers come from that are a little different than we originally thought. I don't want to give it away, I guess. But I could also be wrong in my guesstimate as to what is really going on. And there's just 1 issue left, and they tell us it will be a double issue coming out in March. So it's going to be another kind of significant wait. I think maybe if one goes back and reads the whole thing together, all 12 issues, hopefully it will all come out together in a trade someday. I think they've already put out a 6-issue trade. But anyway, if the whole thing together might hang together a lot better. Or it might not. I'm not sure. So that was number 5. In at number 4 is this new comic, Dead Seas. I flipped through it at the store, and I really liked the way the art looked. And it was an okay story. Another basically horror story or science fiction horror story. One of those stories where they get a bunch of prisoners to volunteer for something sketchy, and then horrible things happen. In this case, it takes place at sea. Maybe I shouldn't give out a whole lot more than that. I enjoyed reading it, but it just didn't hook me in quite. I don't quite know why. I still liked the art quite a bit once I read it. Yeah, so we'll look at the art in a minute. The art reminded me a bit of Francesco Francavilla, and just also kind of had an old school, almost Johnny Quest kind of feel to it or something. Um, but at the end of the day, it didn't grab me. So I don't know if I'll grab any future issues of that. In at number, so let's see, that was 4. And at number 3 is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Voyages. And I also read issue number 1 of Voyages this week. I love the art in here and the color. Fantastic. It's kind of a young adult science fiction story, and it's tricky. How do you fill your audience in on the wild backdrop of this? Because it takes place with a bunch of different aliens, no humans, but some of the aliens find the old Voyager space probe and eventually find the disc on it that was like a record, and one of the characters seems to get telepathic messages from the disc. So understanding the whole situation they're in, the resources from their planet have somehow been destroyed by a black hole being nearby, and there's a tyrant. So there's a lot of interesting stuff, and it kind of feels a little bit like a young adult story. After a while, you realize that the main character and her best friend or coworker or whatever, they're both kind of teenagers, part of a village of survivors who kind of scavenge what's left on the planet while trying to avoid the forces of this would-be dictator who's been alive for 2 centuries. Anyway, start seeing how complicated it all is. So I may pick up more issues, or maybe it would make sense to wait for a trade, or maybe read it on Hoopla. I'm torn because I really enjoyed the art, and I think there may be a good story here, or it may continue to be kind of a soup of ideas that doesn't congeal. I'm not sure. Pure science fiction, or pure science fiction satire, not science fiction horror. In other words, this is the issue 2 of Traveling from Mars. It was my number 2 book. I'm enjoying this series a lot. I also read issue 1 of it pretty recently. I didn't read it the week it came out. It's one of the things that I got behind on during the month or two when I wasn't reading many comics. Anyway, my basic takeaway is this feels like a classic Kurt Vonnegut short story, with all that kind of bitter cynicism that you expect from Kurt Vonnegut, plus the kind of literary angle. It doesn't read at all like most other comics, because there's a lot of character introspection, and it troubled me a little bit in the first issue that there was so much sort of poetic and metaphorical and just sort of diary kind of introspection from the character, while we very slowly learned what his situation is. And it still continues in that way here, but at least now we fully understand the situation. So it's different. You just kind of have to switch gears a little bit when you read this comic. It takes a different pace. It's more like reading a prose story that is to some degree successfully melded into a comic book. And maybe with a different artist who had a different approach, it might work a little better. I'm not too thrilled with the artist on Traveling from Mars, so it's definitely the strength of the writing that holds me there. And then at number 1, probably not a surprise to a lot of people who know me, Sergio Aragones' latest Gru comic. The Gru with Tarzan was horrible, but he's in fine shape now that he's not trying to do a crossover. We continue the story that's been in 2 other miniseries, Fray of the Gods and Play of the Gods. I don't think you have to have read those to enjoy this, but it might make a little more sense to you if you've read those ones. But it's hilarious. The art is fantastic. The jokes are classic Gru, but mixed in with this idea of if you convince people to think of you as a god, then a god version of yourself will pop into existence in the realm of the gods. You on Earth won't even know about it. But so we get a 2-track story, one of Gru on Earth and one of Gru up in the clouds, because some people have decided he's a god. And so we get to see Gru messing with the gods up in the godly plane. So it's fun, slightly satirical work in the Gru fashion, and there's lots of cheese dip jokes, some great referto moments, and just a lot of pleasure. So if you haven't tried Gru before, you could pick up this issue, or you could look for the trades of Gru Fray of Gods. That might be a good starting place. But I think you can just start here and just assume there's a little bit that you'll figure out as you go along. But there's really not a whole lot. The characters continue from the previous stories, but that's about it. Anyway, fantastic. I look forward to showing you the art on the inside of this. Okay, let's take a look inside these comics. This is the number 6 book, the least successful one for me, where they just seem to be trying to, I don't know, sketch out some rough but not very original horror ideas, variations on horror classics, you might say, with the person who comes back from the dead and kills people, and then anyway, you can see the colors are kind of nice. I don't know if this is kind of semi-amateurish coloring, but it's kind of worked for me. I kind of enjoyed the color here, and kind of a fun art style. Seems like an art style that we see every now and then from what's this called? From Source Point Press. Robert Ahmed's style is a little bit similar, but maybe a little more advanced than this style. And then a more sort of, I don't know what you'd call this style here, but it seems a little more Photoshoppy or something, but it seemed fairly effective too. But again, story-wise, it was just a very familiar, quick sketch of a serial killer out in the woods that people have to worry about. Are these setups for future, more complicated stories? I don't know. Maybe it depends on the success of this. I like the cover. It's just kind of stylish. Anyway, a little disappointing. Berserker, the last few issues of Berserker, we've kind of been delving into his background or his backstory, or trying to figure out what he really is through some kind of experiments, psychological things. And now we seem to be, the bit of a spoiler it seems to be hinting, and I might even be misunderstanding, that actually our Berserker character, who's been around for 80,000 years, that his powers may come from alien technology or aliens in some way visiting Earth, but it's totally not clear to me. The colors are really cool. Love this page here. And the graphics, which you always expect from Ron Garney, are very impressive, but I really don't know. And I really don't know fully what's going on. And maybe some of that I think we can blame on the gap of time, but not all. The gap of time between issues. There seem to be two different, maybe the regular army, and then there's some other secret group trying to take over and steal the powers of the Berserker, and apparently they succeed. I don't know what happened here. That looks really cool. Maybe issue 12 will pull it all together for me, or maybe a reread of the whole thing together will pull it all together for me. It's been an extremely fast read all along, so going back and reading all 12 issues isn't really that daunting of a prospect. But we'll see. Yeah. And I would love to see Ron Garney and Bill Crabtree on another project together, perhaps one with a little more of a concrete plot. And Dead Seas was the one that was the hoary old, or not hoary old, but kind of a familiar plot idea that I guess comes from reality of having convicts volunteer to be part of some experimental thing which will cut time off their sentences. And our hero wants to get back and see our hero who's in jail wants to get back and see his son before his son is all grown up, I guess, spend some time with his child, which is a kind of moving motivation in my mind. So the prisoners are brought to this boat in the middle of far out in the ocean where experiments are being done. We also have learned we're in a world where supernatural ghosts or other sort of phantasmagoric, ghostly kind of appearances have become a regular thing. There's the daughter that he wants to spend time with. And on this boat, they found that if they capture those creatures, there's some kind of goo or essence that comes off of them that they can collect and use for some purpose. So the prisoners are here to be the people who have to collect the goo. And we're slowly learning that the result of collecting that goo is a much more horrible effect on the prisoners than they've been let to know. So that's where the story's going. I don't know if I'll keep reading it. I enjoyed the art and color. Like I mentioned, it's a bit Francisco Francavilla-esque. And yeah, but somehow just it might have just been like the pacing or... Yeah, I think it was mostly in the pacing and the unfolding of the story. It just didn't grab me quite enough to keep going. But we'll see. It may depend on what's going on the week when the next issue comes out. I've not heard of these creators before. But anyway, they're trying to do something kind of complicated here in a way, with the layer of the world having changed and then the prisoners and on the boat and all of that. And so maybe that's where kind of a bit of a struggle in the pacing came out. Voyages, as I said, I read these 2 issues and I was very in love with the artwork. And it also, I guess, even more than Dead Seas, has a very complex backstory and front story that it's trying to let us in on. And it starts, I think partially it starts like it seems like this woman is just wandering into this situation. But then we realize after a while of reading that this was a mission she was on, and it was all more sort of organized than we thought. What's the word? All more... Anyway, everything had more of a purpose. But so again, kind of the way the story unfolds and stuff took a while to capture my attention, but here the art really captured my attention. This is art that really excited me, exciting coloring. I think, so it's written and drawn by the same person, by Sumyi Keskin. I have no idea if I'm anywhere even close on that. And they are credited with creating, and there's no one else listed but the editor. So I think they've done everything, maybe including the lettering, and definitely this great coloring. I'd say that the artwork perhaps in issue 1 was even more spectacular. Issue 2 is perfectly fine, but maybe more just getting things done and less sort of blowing our minds with some of the backgrounds and stuff. Still very good, and it's in this issue, I think, that we see the we really learned that the point is that they found the Voyager satellite, and they've taken the disk off of Voyager, and so let's see, yeah, there's the disk there, and so then we realize, okay, a important plot point and why it's called Voyages is the connection to Earth and Voyager, sent out probably hundreds of thousands of years before the events of these stories Voyager was not traveling that fast through space. It takes a long time for it to get to other worlds, I would say. I suppose it could go through wormholes and stuff and get there earlier. But I assume we won't have human beings actually show up in this story, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't think it says anywhere how many issues Voyages is going to be. Again, from the story, I would be happy to just read this in trades, but we'll see again how I feel when I'm buying the singles, when I'm out buying singles, whether I keep it up with it. Traveling to Mars also doesn't say how many issues they're going to be, but I assume it's not too many. It's a Blaze who doesn't do long series, and it feels like it's a short story. So I would think 4 issues, maybe 5 at the most. That's my guess. So there's our character who we mostly just read his diary as he's traveling towards Mars and get little flashes of life on Earth and his past life. And the basic, I think I can give it away with issue 2. The basic premise is that there's been discovered a motherlode of natural gas on Mars, and whoever gets there first gets to claim it. So this company that makes, I think, fake meat has set up a spaceflight for this guy. He's working for them, and basically he's dying of cancer anyway, and there's something about spaceflight that holds his cancer at bay for a while, so he'll get to live a little longer, and his mom will get $10 million. But his mom's not very happy about this when she finds out. And a lot of the emphasis is the idea that he had a meaningless life. Apparently, if you work as a store manager, which he did, of a pet store manager, then your life is meaningless, I guess. He had a marriage, it ended in divorce. So I was a little irked by that, but not too much. I think there's a little, just because you're a comic book writer, that you think other lives are wasted if they don't accomplish big things. Oh, so it's just a 20-page story. It seems thicker, but it's got like an 11-page preview for something else. I don't read previews at the backs of comics. I glance at them, I guess, to see the art, but they never work. They often just turn me off, and I just kind of get bothered by previews being in the package that I get. So that was number 2, and in at number 1 was one of my all-time favorite comics, not this specific comic series, I should say, Gru. And a lot of people tried the Gru meets Tarzan series, that miniseries that came out, and then before that, quite a while ago, was Gru meets Conan. Both of those are the 2 worst examples of Gru and Gru's sense of humor. So it's unfortunate that most people won't try just a pure Gru story. This was excellent. Sergio Aragonés's art is fantastic. It looks like simple cartoony scribbling, but every panel has so much going on in it. This jester, the end of the jester's lute, has some different thing at the top of the lute in every image, which is really wild. So you could just spend some time looking at what is going on at the end of his lute every time. He's not a jester, I'm sorry. He's like a bard or something. And as I said, it does continue on from previous miniseries, but I think you can jump into it and enjoy it. If you really want, you can get Play of the Gods and Fray of the Gods and Play of the Gods. I think it's in that order. And then this is the 3rd in the trilogy, Gods Against Gru. And the plot here is always, from the beginning of the series, has been that if someone is believed to be a god, or gets people to believe in their god in the real world, then that god will appear in the realm of the gods, which is just this cloudy area where the gods hang out and talk to each other. So now some people think Gru is a god. So there's a Gru a god version of Gru and Referto up in the realm of the gods, and of course they start causing chaos and wanting to eat everything. So they want to eat the holy sheep there, and eventually the gods create cheese dip according to Gru's recipe, or according to a recipe they find that Gru likes. And it's very hot and spicy. I had not thought about what they mean by cheese dip. Do they mean it's kind of like nacho cheese dip, maybe? And so as all the gods try the cheese dip and love it at first and then find it far too spicy and hot, volcanoes and earthquakes start going off in the real world. There's an example of all the detail that you get in a single panel. And there's a new colorist, Tom Luth, who's colored this for the entire life of the Gru series since the 80s, has retired, and so a new colorist took over. I forget, is her name on the cover? Her name is Carrie Strachan. And I feel like she does quite a good job. Coloring Gru is a lot of work just because of all the different figures and characters that you have to figure out, but they do not require lots of fancy coloring tricks. So anyway, a lot of fun, and that's what Gru's all about, is fun. A little bit of social satire, but of a very light hand on the social satire, not like heavy-handed, difficult social satire. Hail Gru, almighty Gru. Anyway, so I had a great time. I'm having a great time. I keep looking at all these panels just because I'm having a great time looking at them all. We have several threads of the story, including about the sage who's giving advice to the queen because he's hoping to make money off of it, and these sailors and other people who want to get all the gold that has been uncovered in this country where they worship Gru as a god. And then Gru himself, and then what's going on with Gru and the gods. So at the end of this issue, spoilers I guess, we get a giant army of all the gods' soldiers in the heavenly realm who are going to fight Gru. And Gru, of course, loves a battle. He loves a fray. So more fun to ensue in the rest of this 4-issue series. Oh, and of course, there's always a Referto solo strip at the end, a wordless comic, which is what Sergio Aragonés made his bones on in the first place. Anyway, delightful package. Yes, Dark Horse has thin covers. As Jared Osborne's pointed out, he did not pick up this Gru because of that, I think. But I would say, in terms of a Dark Horse product, it's content all the way through, no ads. So I think it's about 30 or more pages of story. Well, there's this one ad at the back. But anyway, 30 or more pages of story, plus 3 pages, I think, or is it 2 pages? 2 pages, maybe. 2 pages of very entertaining letter. The letters pages on Gru are all very funny. So there you go. We'll flip the camera back around and look at my haul and call it a day. So first off, I'm real excited. I did not know that there was a DC Superstars that featured Sergio Aragonés, a solo Sergio Aragonés collection. DC Superstars presents The Wild and Wacky World of Sergio Aragonés. It's issue number 13. I don't know if they ever did this again. It says all new stories and gags, so I'm looking forward to that. At first I thought it might be a reprint of stuff he'd done in some of their other books. Let's take a quick peek inside. We've got rid of the tape ahead of time. But because Sergio actually did quite a bit in Plop, and usually had a page or 2 in the House of Secrets or the House of Mystery, I forget which, or maybe both. So here we go. I see some House of Mystery stuff going on there. maybe these are outtakes. Maybe maybe there was a point at which they ceased publication of something and had a backlog of Sergio work to put out, or maybe they wanted to do a Sergio issue. So it looks like we have all his. We've got 3 different of the mystery host characters introducing it. So anyway, look forward to this. Looks like there's a text piece about Sergio. Or is it an interview with him, perhaps? I'm not sure. So there's always these little things that you didn't even know exist, and then you find them. I knew of Vanguard Illustrated, but I didn't know there were so many issues. I found a bunch in the bargain bin. That's issue number 6. Issue number 7. Is that a monkey? With a satanic thing. Let's see. George Evans art on the inside. Huh. Vanguard issue number 5. And Vanguard issue number 4. I guess I have them out of order. Vanguard issue number 3. Ooh, I like that cover. That is Al Williamson, of course. No wonder I like it. The back cover is pretty weird, or maybe that's an ad for some comic of theirs, Freakwave. This is Pacific Comics. If you weren't around in the 80s, you wouldn't remember them. 1984. Well, that art looks really familiar. Who is that? Who is that? Wild Colors, too. I was thinking this would be a black and white magazine. Oh, here's a Baron and Steve Rude story from early in their career, in their collaboration. I guess Nexus was already out at this point. I'm not sure. In fact, was Nexus ever? No, it wasn't published by PC. It was published by First. So anyway, is that out? And then some Tom Yates. And as I was flipping, I instantly saw, look at that. There's Isaac Asimov and Harlan Ellison. Who's the other person? Do they say? Carl Sagan. Oh, it's a character reading their books. Okay. And then this is a Kirby book. The Last of the Viking Heroes. I may already have this one. It sounds familiar. And of course, inside it's not actually by Kirby. Is it drawn by Theakston? I'm not sure. Michael Thibodeau drew it and colored it. And it doesn't say who wrote it. Funny. Maybe there's a Jack Kirby script lying around. I don't think so, because I don't think he wrote scripts before he drew things. Mighty Crusaders number 2 from Red Circle, which was Archie. Archie tried several times to bring these heroes back. This was when Rich Buckler was the editor, and he also drew this issue, and I'm a Rich Buckler fan, so it's a no-brainer to grab this from the bargain bin. And then I finally have a copy of E-Man number 1, the original Charlton series. I really love this cover. So now I think I may have a complete run of the original E-Man. I have to double check that. Because after a while they started doing reprints. And then I never knew there was a giant-sized Doc Savage, but I guess there's only one of these. Is that? Yeah, that looks like a Sal Buscema cover to me. But I haven't looked to see on the inside who drew Doc Savage this time around. There was a lot of the Doc Savage was done by Ross Andrew in the Color series, and by John Buscema and or Tony DeZuniga in the Black and White series at Marvel. And here we have Ross Andrew. Depending on who inks Ross Andrew, it works better or worse for this kind of pulpy story, I found. And part of this is inked by Jim Mooney, and the second part by Ernie Chua, a.k.a. Ernie Chan. I think the Jim Mooney is going to go better with Andrew than the Ernie Chan, but I'll see. Anyway, excited to have that. I found when I collected all the Marvel Doc Savage that I actually liked the Color series more than the Black and White series For some reason, the black and white stories seemed a little dull, if I'm remembering correctly. So I'm glad to have another one from the color series. Actually, who wrote it? So I think Steve Englehart. Yep, Steve Englehart wrote the Doc Savage stories from Marvel that I liked. And then I found some bunch of Inhumans. I'm sort of collecting this short 1970s Inhumans run. Some of them are drawn by George Perez, not all. This is number 4. And number 8, nice Gil Kane cover. Number 9 looks like, oh, it's Keith Pollard. I was going to guess Ron Wilson. A Keith Pollard cover. I think Keith Pollard might be the interior artist for these later issues of it. The Inhumans, number 9. And number 10. Was number 10 the last one? I think I may have the whole thing now. This is a Hannigan cover. Hannigan was never a favorite artist of mine in interiors, but he did seem to do a good job on covers. And then here's an odd one that it's a 3D comic by Wally Wood or Wallace Wood of Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But it's a reprint of a really early comic that Wally Wood did. Well, without the glasses, you won't be able to tell, but it's not immediately recognizable as Wally Wood art, although it is nice. It's nice Golden Age style art. Not bad at all. A little bit Will Eisner-ish, I would say. I wonder if this was around the time. Well, 1950 is when Wally Wood did a few comics for Will Eisner, and I'm not seeing a date right away. Apparently, Harry Harrison was also involved in the making of this comic book back then in the 40s, before he became a science fiction writer. He briefly was a science fiction or a comic book artist. Where does it say anywhere? No. But I think it's I don't know where I got the idea, but that it's from very early in Wally Wood's career. And I don't know why whenever I see a 3D comic, if it's not too expensive, I just grab it. Somehow it excites me. And then I put on the little glasses and I do my best to actually read it. Here's a underground comic. I think it's underground, called Laugh in the Dark. I don't know anything about it, but the price was right. I don't see the price on here anymore, but it was some small price, like $4 or $5, and then I got a 25% off of it. Published by Last Gasp, 1971. So I'm looking forward to digging into that, see what they've got. Looks wild and crazy. I like the layouts and the strong black art, strong inky black art. So yeah, we'll see. Laugh in the Dark. I wonder if there were other issues of Laugh in the Dark. And then another issue of 8 Ball. So I could kick myself in the pants. This one is issue number 11 for having bought some copies of 8 Ball off of eBay for $20 and $15 when in the stores I run into 8 Ball and it's always in the $5 range. I can't remember what I paid for this, but it was either $5 or $6 or maybe even $4. That looks strangely like Ben Kingsley to me there. Anyway, that's cool. I'm slowly collecting an 8 Ball, getting the 8 Ball run in the originals. And then I always grab Little Dot and Dotland if they're not too expensive. I have quite an extensive, there's 3 different Little Dot series. I have quite a lot of them. My favorite actually is Little Dot Aunts and Uncles. That's the ultimate best. Here's the regular Little Dot series. This is number 36. This must be, I would assume, from about 1969, 1970. And speaking of those old bygone days, this is probably 71 or 72, a late in her run Millie the Model issue, number 202. Always good. And then speaking of Tom Yates, you know what? I hope I didn't already mention this. Dracula versus Zorro. Did I mention this in another haul? It's Tom Yates and Don McGregor, and I found out it's a reprint of an earlier Dracula versus Toro. And I got more I filled out my this miniseries Tomb of Dracula, Day of Blood, Night of Redemption series, which has some really nice Gene Colan artwork in it. I don't know how it figures in with the older run that Colan and Marv Wolfman did, but I'm really looking forward to digging into this and reading it. So I already had one of the issues. This is issue 1. And issue 2. I must have had issue 3, I think. And now I have issue 4. Yeah, 4. And that's the end of the series. So super exciting. And finally, last but not least, at my store, I did not know that the absolute Bernie Wrightston and Len Wein Swamp Thing was coming out. And I couldn't wait. Rather than waiting to order it online, I just went ahead and got it. I got my 25% discount. In Stock Trades, it turned out had it for a 50% discount, but oh well. Still a good deal. Its list price, I think, is $100. Is that right? Well, it doesn't have the list price on it anymore. It doesn't want to come out. Usually, actually, it slides out pretty easily. There we go. It has this... just like the Alan Moore ones, and maybe it's because of the success of the Alan Moore ones that they're now putting this out. It has this kind of spongy feeling cover that feels kind of swampy. And unlike the Alan Moore ones, the recoloring is faithful to the original Bernie Wrightston coloring. It's remastered by Jose Villarrubia. But Bernie Wrightston did his own coloring back then, and so it's pretty good looking stuff. It's not all Bernie Wrightston because, of course, he left the series. Oh, there's some nice Bernie Wrightston Batman. Wrightston left the series, and the new artist that picked it up, let's see, was Nestor Redondo. There's quite a few Bernie Wrightston issues. Yeah, so I think what they've done here is they put in the entire... There's the Nestor Redondo artwork. It's very good artwork, but it's not quite as... I don't know. It's quieter. It's a little quieter. It's more classically illustrative artwork in a sense. It doesn't jump out at you much. So what I think they've done here is they put in the entire Len Wein run, because eventually Len Wein left it, I believe... David Michelinie took over for a while. Yeah, so the last issue in here is this Len Wein issue called The Leviathan Conspiracy. That was the cover of it. And I know it continued on beyond then because I have the single issues of most of this run, but not all of it. Anyway, so yeah, that's a great Nestor Redondo splash page. So I'm really psyched for this. And what do I read first? This or the Dracula series or the Underground comics? I don't know. But thanks for hanging out with me.